Modeling is hard, but there are ways to make it easier, so let's get to that. So first of all, practice makes better. So you might already know that you can add in a loop cut and then extrude that out. But part of the process of modeling is really knowing kind of how the overall mesh will respond to the changes you make. For example, if I grab this face and then move it, you can see the rest of the mesh sort of responds to that movement. So understanding how the rest of the mesh will respond to certain movements is important, because then you know what movements to make to achieve the result that you want. A mistake that I've certainly made in the past is rushing the modeling. So this scene right here, I was working from reference, but I can tell you that the modeling for this, just modeling, took me 5 or 6 hours. And there's really a lot of details here. For example, there's this rope going around the pole here. There's a lot of extrusions within the assets, the window frames, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And there's just a lot of detail overall. And really, while these details don't make a big difference individually, when it comes to the final product, it really does add a lot of realism. Because this is more of a city environment, I have a slight displacement on the ground, but if you're creating a natural environment, then you're going to want to have even more displacement. But yeah. On the left here is an example of what I would consider to be rushed modeling. So you can see that these window bar things, I don't know what they're called, but it's intersecting with the window frame, and there's 90-degree angles, there's no bevels, so and it's just kind of sticking out of the building, kind of like it's been attached to it, but it's not really embedded into the building. And then overall the shapes are just very basic, whereas the one on the right here is a much better example of how modeling should be done, especially if you're going for photorealism. So because in real life there's a lot of details, like for example this little balcony here and the doors, just in general a lot more detail on the windows, and there's details on the building as well, like this like these sort of extrusions here and this bottom part as well. All of these things contribute to the final result. You might be wondering how to create something like this in terms of the window booleans and all that. We can start by adding in a cube and then adding in another cube, and then this will be kind of the boolean cutout. So if we just add a boolean to this object right here and then set the boolean object to our cube here, if we hide this, now we have a face kind of inside. That might be what you want, in which case you can leave it like this. But if you want to just cut a hole out of here without having this face here, what you can do is just delete these faces. So these inside faces here. So that's this one out here as well as this one in here. Just go ahead and delete them. And then now you can see that it's actually just cutting out a hole from there. Now what happens here is that you can see there's this these other faces that are kind of added, and what you can do to fix this is add a solidify to the cube. So the cube here. So you can add a solidify and then put it above the boolean, and now you can see that it's just a hole cut out without those extra faces. And one other thing, if you're noticing that it's just not working, make sure that the normals on your cutout object are facing outwards. So if I go into face orientation here the blue side should be like going out, and then the red side should be kind of going in. So like this is the cutout, this is the area that's being cut out, and then the red side should be facing this way. So of course this is just a cutout object. In order to create the window frame, what I like to do is duplicate this cutout object and then solidify it. And then maybe even thickness. Yeah, sometimes you want to use even thickness. And then you want to make sure that the cutout object is like going through the frame. And then from there you can just hide the cutout object. And there you go. And then from here you can add more detail, like you can duplicate it again and then scale it in on the axis going this way. Or you can, I prefer to do it this way, just apply the solidify and then just add 2 loop cuts like that, and then grab this face loop here and then just E, S, and then Shift X. So like Shift X in this case because this is the X-axis, so you don't want it kind of scaling on the X-axis on the axis going this way. So and just S Shift X a little bit further, and then you have multiple layers of the window frame. This can really come in handy here because if I'm trying to create a stair step, Z dimension of a stair step is typically around 18 centimeters. So I can just type in 18 centimeters here. And now this will be 18 centimeters on the Z-axis. We can do something similar for the X and Y. Now we have a stair step with the correct dimensions. The modifier stack also comes into play here. So earlier I showed you how to create this window cutout here, but what if you want to have multiple windows kind of going along this way and along that way? Well, we want to array both the cutout and the window frame. There isn't really a good way of doing that using the default offset type of relative offset. It's instead better to use a constant offset, and you want to make sure that your rotation and scale are applied when you use this, because otherwise the numbers will be kind of off. If I set this to 0, 1, and just set this to value that makes more sense, and then adjust this as well. So now we have the cutout kind of like that. And we can use the same number here. So we can just copy this exact modifier and it'll automatically copy this number 5.43 from here. So the offset of the array will be the exact same for the window frames and the cutouts. So if we select the window frame and then shift select the cutout and then Control L copy modifiers and then just apply the rotation and scale on the window frame, and now you can see that it's perfectly lined up. Now if we were to try this using the relative offset, it won't work, and I'll actually show you that right now. So if I uncheck the constant offset and check the relative offset and then set this to like 1.9 or something. So if we try to copy the modifiers this time, so Control L copy modifiers. So now they both have the relative offset of 1.9. and then apply the rotation and scale on both of them. They're misaligned and it's very obvious, so even though the number is the same on both modifiers. So use constant offset and that will fix that problem. And then of course you can array it up as well using constant offset, so let's get rid of that. And then just drag that up. And this is the window frame, so I'm just going to copy that over to the cutout. And now we have this. This last one's going to be a bit more general. When you're creating a large scale project, you want to take all the help that you can get, and that includes things like add-ons, models, textures from various websites. There's plenty of great stuff out there that's free, so I'll link some of that down below. And even paid stuff, I know like it can kind of come across like you're paying to get some kind of advantage or something, but if you're trying to create a high quality product, then you should do whatever you need to do to accomplish that. Now, of course, if you're creating something just for purposes of being able to say that you made it in its entirety, then of course you might not want to use stuff from other sources. But aside from that, you should take advantage of it wherever you can.